Hi everyone, I'll just check you can hear me all right. If I can get somebody to give me a thumbs up, you can let me know if you can hear me. I'll assume that
we can hear you.
Catherine.
We can hear you.
Excellent, that's great news. Fantastic.
I see you and hear you.
To be with you. Wonderful, that's fantastic, thank you. I'll be very brief in my introductory remarks because we have a packed session today. Just very briefly, I'm the Director of the Global Blended Finance Task Force and have been a strong supporter and colleague of our work for the blend, and particularly working on what we're talking about today, the Global Blended Finance and Innovation Institute, which has, as many of you will already know, a really strong emphasis on mobilizing private and public capital for priorities around climate, around inclusion, around delivering the SDGs, not only in Indonesia, not only in Southeast Asia, but globally. It's important that we support these types of institutes, these hubs of innovation, and these places where both providers of public capital, investors of private capital, project developers and government officials can come together, not only to tackle some of the barriers, but really to look at opportunities that we're seeing in a more equitable, a net zero, a nature positive economy. I just want to acknowledge something that John Kerry said earlier, where the transition to a net zero economy is the greatest economic opportunity of our time. And I really want to have that as the framing for this session, because if we see this as a burden, if we see this transition as something which is, not about jobs or not about investment, then we actually are missing that incredible economic opportunity. And that's also why we've got so many people to talk to us today, really all around how we pay for nature, how we develop best-in-class financial structures. I know we've got our friends from PTSMI and from the Ministry of Finance on the line to talk about SDG Indonesia 1, and also how we look at creating a strong and investable pipeline and the right enabling policy so that we can, not only in a domestic sense, but also internationally, attract the right investment for sustainable infrastructure, for low carbon transport, and for natural solutions which protect and regenerate our natural ecosystems. It's on that note that it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker for opening remarks. An old friend of mine, actually, Chairman Wimbo from Indonesia's Financial Services Authority, OJK. Chairman Wimbo, as many of you will know, has been an absolute champion, not only around sustainable finance regulations, green banking policies, but also on the natural capital agenda. You are such a big champion of the oceans and the blue economy agenda as well, which is so important for Indonesia as a country with 17,000 islands. It's my pleasure to hand over to you for opening remarks as we deep dive on this Global Blended Finance and Innovation Institute with a particular focus on finance, natural, and how we mobilize investment for sustainable infrastructure and energy transition. So Chairman, over to you for being with us.
Okay. Are you hearing me?
I'll give you the double thumbs up as well. Hi, Pak Wimbo, nice to see you.
Clear.
Is my voice clear?
Very clear.
All right, okay, thank you. Okay.
Great.
His Excellency General Luhut Panjaitan, Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment, and also Honorable John Kerry, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, the United States of America. Excellency Pak Suharto Manoarfa, Minister of National Development Planning, and also Pak Mahendra Siregar, Vice Ministers of Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pak Aloy Dohong, Vice Minister of Environment and Forestry, Ibu Mari Pangestu, Managing Director of Development Policy of World Bank, and also Jeff Sachs, President of United Nation Sustainable Development Solution Network. Yeah. And also, dear college, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. Who are you in the United States? And good evening. Who are you in Jakarta or in Asia? First of all, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Coordinating Minister of Maritime, Pak Luhut, yeah, and also Pak John Kerry as U.S. Special Envoy, and also the Hita Karana Climate Forum for hosting this meeting. Yeah. It is really my great pleasure for delivering remarks of this very important meeting. On behalf of Indonesia Financial Service Authority, or we call it OJK, we're glad to see how the initiative has begun to materialize and to gain the traction globally, especially in the field of sustainable finance. As we are aware, the current global COVID-19 adversely affects so many aspects in our life, including economy, social, financial aspect, in anything in our life. Yeah. It has weakened the global economic growth, including put pressure on the real and also in the financial sectors. Addressing the COVID-19, the economy and financial sector is a very important aspect. But the financial sectors also need to focus on the risks arising from climate change. It is time for us really to collaborate to create synergy, make the issue of climate change is a high priority. Again, it is very high priority in our life. And then I urge to put all the plan into action very soon. I believe that is why all of us here to discuss in this forum. At this event, please allow me to really just focus on the financing part, where OJK plays very significant role as in the authority in the financial sectors. I would like to really reiterate, OJK is highly committed to this issue and committed to make necessary effort on establishing effective regulatory framework with respect to the environment, and also to enhance the development of sustainable finance for the achievement of the SDGs and also especially the climate change. In this action, we would like to convey several points on the development of sustainable finance in Indonesia. Actually, first, I would like to reiterate why we need the sustainable finance and what the policy direction is with respect to the financial sectors. Those two aspects should serve as reminders for all companies, including the financial sectors, to pay attention to the balance of natures, changed lifestyles, production processes, and consumption patterns that are environmentally friendly, and implement a sustainable agenda to ensure the preserving our life and for our future generation. The harmonization is a keyword that each industry has own characteristic of achieving their own goals, their own objective, and they present its own set of challenges in the meeting of their business. Therefore, I find that a synergy among all players supported by harmonized regulation are key to achieve the SDGs and also the climate change in the near future. We recognize so many commitments and blended finance around the world, that it has become a challenge for us to transform such commitment into reality. In Indonesia, we roll out the Finance 33 project through blended finance schemes from various stakeholders since the meeting, the World Bank and IMF meeting in Bali, 2018, which is actually the collaboration under the SDG Indonesia One program. In this regard, OJK is very highly committed to flying the flag for sustainable finance. In line with this, we will require our financial services industry to green their own portfolio by way incorporating environment and social aspect into financial services transaction to the extent of possible. Currently, OJK has prepared, we call it green taxonomy, as a basis for financial services institutions to provide financing to the green sectors. I would like also to remind that OJK has also issued several regulations a few years before to support the implementation of sustainable finance in Indonesia. First, OJK regulation number 51 was issued 2017 regarding the implementation of sustainable finance for financial institutions, issuers, and also public companies. Second, OJK regulation number 16 also issued year 2017 regarding the issuance of green bonds. At this stage, I believe we need to accelerate our action in achieving the climate change and SDGs through sustainable finance. I would like to put on the 3 points as the main priority in Indonesia to ensure the effectiveness implementation of sustainable finance principle as well as attainment of climate change and the achievement of the objective of the SDG in the future. First, finalizing the green taxonomy, which can be used as a guidance for developing innovative products and or sustainable financial services, as well as disclosure for financial services. Green taxonomy is also part of the financial stability and ASEAN taxonomy board's agenda with respect to the disclosure and climate change risk assessment for financial services. Second, developing sustainable finance communication strategy through increasing education and campaign for bankable green sectors. And the third, increasing capacity building for all stakeholders in Indonesia. With this regard, OJK will prepare National Task Force on Sustainable Finance and working together, collaboration with the industry to respond the discussion regarding sustainable finance issues on the national, regional, and global level. Let me close my remark by wishing you all to enjoy your discussion in this session, and then hopefully we can embark our journey to create a better world for all of us and our future generation. Thank you very much. Have a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. What an inspiring way to start this breakout group. I think it's really important that you also know who we've got on the line, Chairman. You know, I can see just looking at the list, people who would be ideal for your Sustainable Finance Working Group. I can see Gimpai from Temasek, Jeremy here, who's the chair of the Blended Finance Task Force We've got friends, John Thwaites from Climate Works. We've got Nabila from Climate Bonds Initiative. We've got Denise, we've got Fitrian, we've got Pat Darwin. There's a whole group here who hopefully can help you with your level of ambition, but just to acknowledge your leadership as well, particularly around issuing those green sukuks so early as well, Chairman. So thank you for your inspiring words. I'm going to be much harsher on the next speakers, Chairman, and ask you all to keep it incredibly brief. We're going to do a quick round the houses and hear from Indonesia's Climate Working Group, particularly to get updates on priorities that are coming out of that climate working group. I hope you can stay with us, but I know your schedule is incredibly busy. So with that, it's my absolute pleasure to pass over to my old friend, Pagluki. Most of you will know Pagluki, Director General of Budget Financing and Risk Management at the Ministry of Finance, and somebody who has been critical to both the sustainable and blended finance agenda in Indonesia and beyond, actually. So Pagluki, over to you for updates, and thanks again for being with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine. Can you hear me? Okay, once again, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, Chairman of OJK, Pak Wimbo, ladies and gentlemen. It's great connecting with you in this virtual meeting, and I wish you all good health and condition. And for this session, I've been asked to briefly share with you on current collaboration between the US and Indonesian government on climate change working group, especially under working group 4, focusing on sustainable and blended finance for our common future. To achieve our NDC commitment with some conservation estimation, the government budget can only cover 34% of the total needs of our emission reduction program. Therefore, the remaining 66% is expected coming from international financing as well as private sector support here. So the objective of this partnership between Indonesia and the US government, in particular under Working Group 4, is aimed to raising private financing in closing that financing gap. So we really appreciate the collaborative spirit as well as responses from the US partners, as we have met a couple of times with representatives from the US government, led by my colleague, I'm seeing here on my screen, Mr. Larry McDonald, Acting Assistant Secretary of the US Treasury. Under his leadership, we've been working together extensively and quite productively. And it's a big and complex problem. So unsurprisingly, we have a very long wish list about what we want or need to do. And so we agree on some what's called collaboration principle. So for example, we should be focusing on potentially workable programs or projects. So not too many programs. Try to optimize the existing cooperation. It should be in line with national strategy, top priorities on NDC implementation. And most of all, try to provide the highest value added based on each party capacity and available resources. So all in all, with all those limitations and constraints, we finally agree to focus on 7 areas of cooperation as follows. First, try to strengthen the existing NDC Indonesia 1 as blended finance platform, technical assistance on risk hedging instrument, as well as capital market development, how to develop more or better incentive for thematic bond that includes green bond, blue bonds, SDG bond, ESG bond, you name it. And also try to design much better coal phasing out scheme or energy transition mechanism, and support for 3 sectors, namely geothermal and other renewable energy, energy efficiency, and transportation. And for tonight, after carefully looking at current domestic needs as well as global situation, and again, various constraints, out of those 7 areas, we need to skip further to 4 main areas as priorities. So for tonight, I'm going to talk about first about SDG Indonesia 1 or SIO. So as a platform, we launched this SIO in 2018, and SIO has a great potential to help Indonesia, particular public sector, in implementing blended finance. So the SIO need to be strengthened to align the government program with development partners' interests. Furthermore, the SIO is driven to support also local governments in doing project structuring. Thus, then finance between public fund and private financing could be carried out. So to be concrete, under this working group 4 umbrella, some action in pipelines include setting up a trust fund for the risking private investment, project preparation, as well as equity investment in strategic projects. Secondly, Government of Indonesia will set up committees involving donor and partner representatives in steering and monitoring the program to strengthen this SIO. Last but not least, Government of Indonesia also invite international investors to improve the SDG Indonesia 1 role in structuring financing scheme for infrastructure projects that relate to SDGs agenda. Second, on energy transition mechanism, or sometimes we call it coal phasing out. So in these activities, we are looking for opportunities and solutions to support the carbonization target through blended finance, which it means a collaboration with private sectors. So in this case, we will be supporting Ministry of Energy as well as PLN or SOE of electricity company in achieving this target. Later on, my colleague from PLN, Pak Darmawan, will also share with you about PLN's plan toward this energy transition mechanism. So under this working group 4, of course, we will work closely with working group 3 to extensively discussing this topic. However, we know that our focus in working group 4 is more in financing sides, about the burden sharing schemes, financial implication, risk, etc. Third, talking about geothermal and other renewable energy. For the geothermal sector, we already have a technical assistant from the US Department of State for our one of SOE, PT Geodipa Energy for Sikidang project. However, there's still huge gap to develop credit guarantee facility for green infrastructure in Indonesia. So we are also proposing a project development facility for ITF project, micro hydro project, and off-the-grid renewable energy models as well. Number 4, last but not least, better incentive for thematic bonds. In this activity, we are exploring potential incentive. In particular, we're talking about pricing benefits for more issuance of thematic bonds, green bond, blue bond, SDG bond, not only from government, but also coming from private sectors. We thank the US since it has agreed to facilitate dialogues also with great investors, as well as other related stakeholders, to find more feasible incentive scheme for those thematic bonds. Because again, without this incentive, I don't think we will be able to attract more and more, private sector to find this other alternative of financing, including like blue bond, SDG bond, ESG bond, or green bonds. So I hope all the work plan can be implemented timely and produce positive impacts to both parties, and of course, significantly contribute to the achievement of net zero carbon emission target. Thank you very much. Very good evening. Back to you, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Lucky. Really appreciate it. Amazing to hear. You're focusing on pipeline cooperation, capacity building, risk hedging, capital market development, and these thematic bonds. I know that a lot of people now will be giving more detailed updates. So I'll go through. We're very pleased to invite Ibu Emma, the Director of Climate Change Mitigation MOEF. Reminder, if everyone can keep to 3 minutes, I know it's hard, but I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, we won't hear from everybody on the various initiatives. Thank you so much for joining us, Emma. Over to you. I'm really pleased to hear about envisioning climate ambition towards net zero emissions. Fantastic. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Honorable Chair of OJK, Pak Wimbo, distinguished participants, good evening and good morning to our participants in Washington, D.C. On behalf of Director General of Climate Change, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, as Chair of Working Group 1, I'm thanking for this opportunity. Let me, at this occasion, briefly share information on Working Group 1 on envisioning climate ambition towards net zero emissions. The purpose of this task force are to build common vision and understanding of net zero emission concept and scenarios of both countries, Indonesia and United States, and to disseminate and to raise awareness to stakeholders about the vision of net zero emissions and how their well-being can be boosted through a decarbonized development path. In each first meeting, both countries had chances to share views of national policies and implementations of climate change and identified of possible joint activities. In the working group meetings in end of May, more technical aspects were discussed in relation to modeling of NDC, updated NDC, and preparation of long-term strategy, low carbon and climate resilience as mandated by Paris Agreement. These were included methodology, business as usual baseline and scenarios for unconditional and conditional target of the first NDC Indonesia. Indonesia also had the opportunity to listen to the US side on how some mitigation actions are implemented. Both countries agreed to continue the discussion on more technical aspect in its sector of NDC mitigation. The discussion mainly focused on energy sector and some related issues as we have heard since the beginning of this meeting, in particular from the opening plenary to what Pak Wimbo mentioned on how we could go further with our plan to phase out coal in the power plant. So this also how we could include this into the modeling. I believe that our discussion in this working group could benefit us in understanding on how we could enhance our effort to reduce GHG emission under our different national circumstances. I would like to add that this working group has not yet defined more detailed activities as the working group 4, as the DG Pak Luki presented. So we have started our discussion, but a very basic stage with this technical modeling and scenarios. In the next meeting, we will have further discussion, and I believe that from that meeting we could agree how we could move forward in this working group.
Nice.
With this, I would like to end my sharing views of working group 1. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you for really almost inviting everybody as well to offer their support for you as well as you design what this looks like going forward. I would call everyone's attention as well to the chat box. We had great questions for Chairman Wimbo and Pak Luki as well around innovative financial mechanisms to decarbonize both particularly the energy sector, but I suspect it also relates to the transport and other and also looking at specific assets as well, and please keep everyone writing in the chat. I don't think we'll get a chance to ask questions given we've got such a packed agenda, but please do put your questions in the chat and we can respond in writing. Next we've got another friend, Fernando, special staff of the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Investment. Fernando, I know you've been working on various things, including food security and natural capital. We'd love to hear from you to talk about the Natural Capital Carbon Communities Marketplace. Please, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Good evening, Pak Wimbo, Lucky. So if I may start my presentation. Okay, so I think the vision of Pak Jokowi is to have for Indonesia to become a global maritime fulcrum, which means to utilize our maritime resources. We see that the carbon market will be one of the platforms to make this happen. It aligns ASEAN to net zero greenhouse gas emission using inclusive regional carbon permit marketplace and supportive investment mechanism. If we see Indonesia, then the carbon market Indonesia actually has two value propositions. The first one, we have the vast amount of natural capital, which includes forestry and renewable energy. The second one, we have a strong partnerships with other countries, not only in ASEAN. Due to these factors, we expect to have an efficient carbon market that will have enough supply and demand for the market itself. This is the concept that we've developed with David. So the first one is the carbon permit marketplace with both sovereign and private sector participants. The second one should be tradable, derived from national carbon cap and trade models, including from allowable offsets from natural capital. The third one, adoption of standards appropriate to the region. That we see right now a lot of differing standards, which we will see in the next slide. The fourth one, the regional and sectoral emission cap or linked regional market with compatible rules and common MRV platform. What is the measurement? This is also the one that we need to be agreed on. The fourth one include emission tracking, clearinghouse, and then also the use of blended finance framework to be aligned with projects from the region. This is the carbon credit mechanism that is defined by World Bank. The first one is international credit, as you know, the Green Development Mechanism. The second one, independent credit, which is not regulated by national or international treaty, but regulated by private and independent organization, which include the VCS and gold standard. The third one is regional, national, subnational credit, which we will see also that a lot of countries actually already has their own standards. Again, there should be a linking between each of the standard itself. So this variation actually cause the carbon price to vary among the standards and geography. You can see in the left, like VCS, gold standard, social carbon. It all range from $1 to $10. The range is pretty high. And then if we see another one, the average price by country, it is also varies. So if the market is inefficient, the market needs to be efficient. That's why also we need to have enough supply and demand. If we see this graph, since Paris Agreement, there was shift from CDM mechanism to VCS. You can see in the dark blue, this is actually the CDM. And then the light blue is the VCS. So the independent model is keep increasing. This is also the part of the width that needs to be agreed on, because in the Paris Agreement, actually there are several issues in the Article 6. The first one is double counting. Second one is the overall mitigation in global emission. It should not be only the net off, but it should reduce the global emission. as a whole. The third one is the carryover from the Kyoto Protocol. It is estimated that there are 4 gigatons of Kyoto from the Kyoto Protocol. If we use this stock directly, then the Paris Agreement target cannot be achieved. Also, because there will be a lot of supply, then it will also depress the price. So if you see in this chart, we see by sector there are 2 of the main contributor for the natural capital. The first one is forestry, and then the second one is renewable energy. Indonesia has a lot of them. Forestry, I think we have 70 to 80% of global market. And then the renewable energy, we have like 20 gigawatts of hydropower in North Kalimantan and in the Papua. If we see the composition in here for forestry, you can see it actually governed by 2 mechanisms, 2 standards, the independent one and regional or national subnational one. No international in here, or very low. So the government of Indonesia has the option to choose between independent and bilateral cooperation. Meanwhile, for renewable energy, majority use international and independent mechanism. But looking at the previous chart, it is estimated that the role of the independent standard will strengthen in the renewable energy sector. So this is the linking that already happened. As you can see in here, EU has its own market, Japan has its own market, US has its own market, China also. But then how to connect this one? Because one market with another market, they accept different standards. So for example, in the EU ETS will allow a certain number of CDM carbon credit, but it has the quota itself. Like I mentioned before, if the quota is high or the supply is much, then the price will be depressed, like what happened in 2011. So how we develop the carbon market in Indonesia, there's also the stages that needs to be discussed. I think to conclude, there are 3 questions that need to be agreed by us. The first one, what is the carbon credit mechanism that should be used in the market? Should it be 1, 2, or more? And how is the price? And then the second one, should the carbon market open in stages or all at once? Who should we open our market to? Who is our participant? Because it will also link to the third question, what sector should be covered in the carbon market? If to create the demand, then there should be regulation in there to set the cap on the carbon market itself. I think that's to conclude my presentation. Thank you, Catherine.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pak Hernando. That's fantastic. And just encourage you again to look at the chat where we've got really good questions and comments, and also to acknowledge we've got Richard and Mezani from CI on the line. We've got Tomo and Edmonds. We've got a number of people who have expertise, particularly around natural capital. And I think Daniel Pfeffer's question was brilliant in the chat as well. Next, we're moving swiftly on to Satu, the country director for Indonesia of the World Bank. We'd love your 3-minute comments on this, and then we'll get over to the remaining speakers in the presentation. Thank you, Satu.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And I'm actually glad that Hernando went before, because I'm going to make 5 points, and some of the points are actually responding to 2 of his questions. I try to be brief. So my first point is that there's right now a very strong global momentum on carbon pricing and emission reduction. And we on the World Bank side, we are actually very delighted that Indonesia is also now moving ahead with carbon pricing instruments. And the carbon pricing instruments, as you all know, they cover both carbon taxes and market-based approaches, such as the emission trading system. And we view basically the NCC proposal that Pa Hernando talked about previously. It can be a very important driver of low carbon transition. So we very much welcome the government's proposal. But that then takes me to my second point that I would like to make. And the second point, that it's very important to have a clear policy design and statement of goals for the proposed emission trading system. Because it's one instrument among others, it's very important that it's coordinated with the other ones. And in particular, given that the government of Indonesia is at the time also talking about introduction of carbon tax. So when we talk about the sectors that will be covered, and when we talk about the caps, it's very important then to see what is the carbon tax focusing on, which sectors does it focus on? And then basically to avoid any adverse interactions between the various instruments. And then there are a lot of decisions that later on will need to be made. But looking at these different carbon instruments holistically and having a plan how to apply them is very important. So you can't look any instrument in a silo, but the coordination is of essence. And that is, then I'm going to taking me to my third point, which is basically focusing on the proposed 2 regional dimensions for this prospective ETS. And these 2 dimensions are also quite noteworthy because in the government's proposal, there is first of all a proposal for a regionally aligned climate reduction plan, in particular across the ASEAN countries. And we think that it would be very important to have a regional commitment to and monitoring of reporting on NDC targets that each country has, because it would foster cooperation and it would also help avert carbon leakage. And we consider that this kind of a sort of a relatively loose, regionally aligned climate reduction plan would be relatively fast to do, and it would be an excellent first step then to the second dimension that the government of Indonesia is thinking about, but which is much more demanding and which is going to take time. And the second dimension is basically trading permits across the region, so having a regional ETS. That we consider to be a longer term aspiration. The first step is to develop the national ETS that then can start basically be linked eventually to the regional system. So again, I mean, we welcome thinking about the regional focus, but we very much recommend that, think about in phases, because taking too big a bite at one go may not allow you to swallow. And then that takes me to my fourth point, that the ETS, it takes time to plan. It has several design elements and it will require mitigation of transitional risks. I'm not going to talk about all of these steps because there are many, but they look simple at the outset, but they are very complicated. Anybody who has done them knows that there are a lot of complicated issues that will have to be decided, and therefore gradual implementation of the ETS is recommended because that will allow fixing the issues as they arise. And my fifth and final point, and hopefully I'm still in time, that it would be important for the government to think about the sequencing of various carbon pricing instruments. And based on what we are seeing today, it seems that the first step and the short-run step that the government is planning to take is the carbon tax, because it can be done relatively fast. I mean, it's not a simple event in itself, but setting the carbon tax, focusing on simplicity and ease of administration is going to be key. But in parallel, government would be very well advised to start the planning and preparation of a national emission trading system, because its implementation is taking time and it's going to be a complicated process. And we on the World Bank side we are more than ready to assist the government with the design, preparation, and implementation of a national ETS. We have done this in several countries, and we can bring also the lessons learned from elsewhere in the world, and thereby basically save time for the government to try to reinvent the wheel. So let me stop there. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you so much, fantastic. And I guess the main thing on natural capital is always in carbon markets around integrity of supply as well as demand. So thank you for those comments. It's now my absolute pleasure to invite His Excellency, the Secretary General of ASEAN. Really pleased to have you with us. Welcome your thoughts on this session. Welcome your contribution as well and leadership on the sustainable finance agenda, particularly around natural capital, as well as what we've already talked about, getting to net zero. So Your Excellency, please do join us and just wanting to check. That's always nice to have a brief moment to think about all the presentations that have gone before, but just wanting to check if Your Excellency, the Secretary General of ASEAN, Dato Lim Jok Hoi, if you could take the floor. You're on mute at the moment. Welcome your contribution now.
Okay. Excellencies, distinguished fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, honored to join DHK Climate Forum Aligning Climate Action on Road to Net Zero Carbon Emission, particularly a session on natural capital carbon community. Climate change is a pressing issue to ASEAN due to our high vulnerability to natural disaster and heavy reliance on climate-sensitive primary resources. ASEAN recognizes the importance of nature-based solutions to reduce emission and combat climate change. In this regard, preserving our natural capital is vital in providing the people and economies of ASEAN with food, water, energy, as well as carbon sink. Despite this natural capital is being overexploited in the region, the rapid degradation of forest, coastal, and ocean habitats. Unless necessary actions taken, it is projected that ASEAN may lose 70 to 90% of habitats and 13 to 42% of species by the year 2100. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has also led to a wider realization of the need for a more sustainable way of doing things. It has presented an opportunity to integrate sustainability as part of our recovery strategy. To this end, the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plans adopted last year reaffirmed the region's commitment to advance towards a more sustainable and resilient future. At this juncture, I wish to highlight a number of initiatives that ASEAN has discussed and initiated in recent years. First, the ASEAN Taxonomy of Sustainable Finance, which is being developed by ASEAN Finance Minister and Central Bank's Governor. The ASEAN Taxonomy will be an overarching guide for ASEAN member states in complementing their respective national sustainability initiative for sustainable finance. An ASEAN Catalytic Green Financing Facility in collaboration with ADB focuses on to accelerate green infrastructure investment in the region. Second, the status report investing sustainable natural capital in ASEAN, which is set to be launched later this year. The status report will be a basis for developing an ASEAN natural capital roadmap that aims to further enhance collaboration among different sectors in integrating natural capital valuation to regional and national programs and policy. Third, ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation phase 2, 2021 and 2025. The plan of action is set out ambitious target for ASEAN to accelerate the shift towards renewable energy, expand energy efficiency effort, and create enabling environment for green investment towards sustainable energy. For example, 23% of renewable energy target for the region's energy mix, 35% of renewable target total installed power capacity, and 32% energy intensity reduction targeted by 2025 based on 2005 level. Fourthly, we are implementing a strategic plan of action for ASEAN cooperation in forestry 2016-2025, which support ASEAN member states in integrating climate change concern into a national forest policy and program, which consists of enhancing sustainable forest management, enhancing trade facilitation, economic integration, market access, enhancing the forestry sector resilience and role of climate change, institutional strengthening and human resource development, and finally, strengthening ASEAN joint approaches on regional and international issues affecting the forestry sector. And finally, we're working towards ASEAN joint statement on biodiversity to be used in time for UN Biodiversity Conference later this year. The joint statement will outline the aspiration and goal of the regions in promoting biodiversity conservation to enhance carbon sequestration capacity, among others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while it is important to strengthen our effort in addressing climate change, we are also cognizant of the diversity of ASEAN member states' development path and the challenges as well as the opportunity this presents. Only by working together at a regional and international level, we are able to devise sustainable and practical solutions to climate challenge. I look forward to continuing this dialogue and advancing natural capital, climate, and community so that we can ensure a green, clean, and sustainable ASEAN for future generation. Thank you.
Excellency, thank you so much. I think many people on this call will be incredibly excited to hear about the Politic Green Finance Facility and especially the Natural Capital Roadmap and the joint set of Kunming. Thank you so much for your leadership, and really do know that the 90 or so people on this call are also working on a number of innovative financial solutions related to natural capital. I know that Denise also on the line has a particular announcement related to the THK philanthropy call to action that she might share with us later as well, which all goes to supporting a more nature positive economy, particularly with the leadership in Indonesia, a country with the third largest contiguous rainforest left in the world and absolutely the most marine biodiverse nation. So fantastic to hear that. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to shift from nature to the energy transition. David, you've got a tough job, but I've got to hear you.
Okay, well, thank you, Catherine, and sorry, you broke up a little. I'm going to jump in just since the connection was a bit bad. It's indeed a pleasure to just highlight together. My colleague Pak Dharma will follow briefly to provide the PLN perspective, but I'm encouraged to hear from my colleagues and excellencies the great work and commitments on climate over the session today. And together in partnership with Indonesian stakeholders, ADB is working on what's called the energy transition mechanism as a way to use low-cost financing to find a market-based approach that can decrease the use of coal power in Indonesia. And we acknowledge that electricity is so important to the economic development and social development in Indonesia. But doing this in the context of increased problems with climate change, we need to find a way to work together to reduce the use of coal power. And the energy transition mechanism is designed to use low-cost financing to acquire coal power plants with the sole objective of retiring them early, but in an organized fashion. And doing that together, while also another component of the energy transition mechanism is to provide funding and support to develop renewable and clean energy technologies. So as in this context that we're working together with Indonesian stakeholders to find ways to reduce the use of coal power in Indonesia, and do that in a way that also addresses the transition to renewables in a just and fair way. And so we want to support those who also depend on the coal industry for their livelihoods, those communities and those individuals. And so we want to support them so that they are not left behind. So this is a very brief introduction, and I also am excited to work with PLN in this to do using a market-based. Happy to indeed engage more fully, but thankful to see that the strong leadership in Indonesia to really look at climate and nature-based solutions to address the power sector and reduce the use of coal. So thank you very much.
You're my hero, David, for keeping it so brief. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. It's my pleasure to welcome Pak Darmawan, now Vice President Director of PLN, who shared with us such exciting news recently around PLN's pledge to carbon neutrality just only a couple of weeks ago. So please, over to you, Pak, and thank you for your leadership. Over to you, but you're on mute. I'm so sorry. COVID times, we're all on Zoom and on mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Everybody, I'm Darmawan, the Vice CEO of PLN. Here is also present Pak Luki Alfirman, Director General of Budget Financing and Risk Management, Ministry of Finance, and also Pak Wimbo Santoso, Chairman Indonesia Financial Service Authority. David, my colleague, already present that ADB and PLN explore ways how to move forward by acquiring coal-fired power plants and in a market-based approach and retiring and replacing it with renewable energy. But let me ask you a very basic question here, that why are we here today? And we are here in this forum with one purpose of all, to ensure that the next generation is having a better future than our current generations. How exactly are we going to do it? Of course, we are here fully committed to reduce carbon greenhouse gas emissions. And PLN is here to announce that we are fully committed exactly to do so. And humankind, innovates. A long time ago, renewable energy price was very high, but with human innovations, the price is going down very quickly. Before, the price of solar photovoltaic renewable energy was roughly 25 cents. Today, it's already reaching 2-3 cents. Even in some countries, it's 1 point something cents. In that regard, we are very confident that with this kind of human innovations, that today renewable energy as a base load is still quite pricey because the battery energy storage systems is still quite pricey comparatively speaking. But in the future, we believe that renewable energy as a base load is going to be able to compete head to head with, comparatively speaking, with the fossil fuel coal-fired power plants not only in terms of technical, but also in commercial. So in that regard, PLN is fully committed. Coordinating Minister Luhut already announced carbon neutral by 2060. Current size of electricity industry in Indonesia is roughly 300 terawatt hour annually. The increasing demand is roughly 4.6% per year, meaning by 2060, the size of the sector is roughly 1,800 terawatt hour. So there is a big gap from today to 2060 is roughly 1,500 terawatt hour. And we are fully committed that we're going to fill up the gap with additional renewable energy. And this is the actually the schedule of coal-fired power plants retirement. We're starting in the new RUPTL on the National Electricity Planning by 2026 until 2030. We are replacing the originally planned coal-fired power plants and gas-fired power plants with the renewable energy as a base load in amount of 1.1 gigawatt capacity. And then the first retirement subcritical coal-fired power plants, stage 1 is in 2030 with capacity of 1 gigawatt, and then 2035 with the second stage, roughly 9 gigawatt. 2040 is the third stage, is roughly supercritical coal-fired power plants being retired with capacity 10 gigawatt. And then from 2045 until 2056, we're going to start retiring our supercritical coal-fired power plants in amount 24 gigawatt in addition of 5 gigawatt. And then we're going to reach by 2060 actually the carbon neutral CO2 emissions. And in the process right now, our transport is still using the oil-based transport, while the demand of oil in Indonesia is increasing very rapid because of the massive infrastructure development, while the production of oil is going down, meaning most of our oil is going to be coming from import. And how are we going to be able to shift from import-based energy to become domestic-based energy, but in the same time, also reducing the CO2 emission in the transport sector, meaning that we also transitioning from oil-based transport to electric-based transport. And then, of course, how PLN is going to be able to do this? We cannot do this alone. We're going to be able to do this with one way to move forward, which is through collaborations. And this is collaborations in terms of technical. This is collaboration in terms of commercial. This is a collaboration in terms of policy. This is a collaboration also in terms of financings. Hence, we sincerely appreciate this forum. We also sincerely appreciate the ADB team that we are still working on exploring ways how we're going to move forward. Of course, considering the market-based approach is one way to move forward with the availability of low-cost financing. And then with this kind of collaboration, we hope that the transition is going to go very smooth. Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. And I just want to acknowledge that the leadership of PLN is actually being used in many other countries at the moment, including South Africa's energy transition with their utility Eskom. So this is a real blueprinting happening here and leadership on a global stage. It's my honor and pleasure now to introduce another old friend, Pak Darwin, the Director of Operations and Finance from PTSMI. Your leadership on SDG Indonesia 1 is well known to this group. I would ask that you could keep it incredibly short. Apologies that we've run so close to time, but I'll get your 1 or 2 minute remarks there, then go to Haya, and then we'll close with 5 minutes from Larry McDonald. Apologies again that we've had such a tight schedule. Pak Darwin, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Very good evening and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is such an honor for me to join in this very important SK Forum. Please allow me to take this opportunity by sharing a status on the SDG Indonesia 1 as well as on the examples of implementation of blended finance in Indonesia. PTSMI has been mandated by Ministry of Finance to establish and operate the first Indonesia blended finance platform that we call SDG Indonesia 1. Since its establishment in 2018, the SDG Indonesia 1 platform as of today has received total commitment in approximately $3.1 billion from 33 domestic and international partners. 95% of supports under this platform dedicated for climate change related project or programs, especially in the renewable energy efficiency, basic infrastructure, post-disaster rehabilitation and rebuilding, and also others. Several types of supports provided in the area of project development, financing and investment, as well as provision of de-risking support and investment ecosystem enabling activities. In 2021, despite the challenging situation of the COVID-19 pandemic, CTSMI has carried out several activities to support the acceleration of green infrastructure development in Indonesia. Among others, we have collaborated with the Bloomberg Philanthropies and Climate Work Foundation to develop the feasibility study related to development of solar rooftop at the airport. This activity to support the target of achieving 23% of energy mix in 2025 and the climate change for sure. And secondly, we believe that reducing inequality is associated with stronger and more sustainable growth. Together with Bloomberg Philanthropy through Fiber and Ocean Initiative and Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, we designed a program to help the economy of the people in the village who are potentially experiencing by the impact of the infrastructure development, including increased accessibility and connectivity to other cities, increased economic opportunity and further development in the tourism sector, while at the same time increasing the resiliency on the climate change impact. We have provided support blended finance in the municipal government by providing loan to municipal government and providing grant to de-risk environmental aspect and mitigation to observe the Bajo community and its life support ecosystem to Desa Bakti Untunuri program. Third, we continue strengthen to create governance and transparency to our donor by setting up donor discussion. For example, with the EU through the KfW and AFD, that provide a grant in amount of 21 million euros to accelerate the development of green infrastructures and help municipal government to fight COVID-19. This partnership is essential. With the support, VTSMI can support the project preparation of the project sponsor that related to climate change. Furthermore, together with AFD, we also developed directing instrument that we call investment premium, which aims to stimulate financing of investment that face higher financial barriers. Together with you, I think we remain committed to support government in accelerating SDG implementation in Indonesia. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity of this sharing in the forum. Thank you. Back to you, Catherine.
Thank you so much for keeping to time. And just because you mentioned the importance of catalytic capital and philanthropy, I know that we do have a big announcement from Denise. So briefly, for 30 seconds, that big announcement, Denise, and then Haya to you. I'm really excited to hear that.
Okay, thank you. I think, can you hear me? Good, I'll try to be as quick as possible. Thank you, Catherine. I just want to introduce, we've heard so much about the need, the huge financial need that is there, and the many projects that really need financing to be able to move and to move at scale. And therefore, I'm really happy to introduce the Hita Karana call to action on blended finance, and that blended finance project is for planetary health and supporting the SDGs. We know how urgent, and we've heard how urgent it is. Our call to action is also really quite urgent. The pledge is for a $1 billion for blended finance. It is there to support project fighting climate change, fighting poverty, also to support communities and to prevent pandemics and all the challenges that we're facing in the world in Indonesia. It's not only for Indonesia or for Asia, it is really a global pledge. And it is open to all, to philanthropic foundation, to entrepreneurial families, to entrepreneurs, to corporations. And it is that the pledge is there to really provide concessional capital to support blended finance projects. So we urge anybody to sign, to speak about it, to talk about it. It is supported by ministers in Indonesia. We will have a website. We can contact Sherry Nur Salim. You can contact myself. You can contact Anfin as well at United in Diversity. We'd be happy to share more information about it, but remember the Blended Finance and Innovation Institute in Bali call for action for the Blended Finance Pledge. Thank you.
Really exciting, Denise. Thank you so much. Haya, over to you. Obviously, well known to all of us from the OECD, such a strong champion of THK, and really wonderful to understand the latest on the True Hita Karana blended finance platform and roadmap.
Thank you, Catherine. I think it has been really a fascinating session here, and I'm really honored to speak on behalf of the OECD. A couple of words. Was previously said how Bali has been inspiring a lot of very important developments. One maybe a little bit less important development than those that was referred to under the inspirational leadership of Sherry, who's part of our session, was the establishment, Catherine, as you were saying, of the THK roadmap on blended finance. It's a very diverse, multi-stakeholder platform, bringing together 100 organizations from 25 countries, north, south, east, west, public, private, think tanks, CSOs, so very, very diverse set of actors across the, if you like, the blended finance community. Now, we have been very active, and we're just moving into a second phase of our work. There are 4 work streams, one of which is important to today, but let me just simply briefly say the other 3. One is about the scaling up of green, social, and sustainability linked bonds, and it has been referred previously how important this is also for the Indonesian context. Then the role of blended finance strategies in the post-COVID context. The third one is on transparency and impact, and then the fourth one is actually on how we can use blended finance instruments much more effective to facilitate investments into it. Very honored to have representatives from the Indonesian government opening all these 4 work streams just very recently. Our clear intention of these 100 organizations that make up this platform to directly feed into the G20 presidency of Indonesia. So that's the objective that we have. Just a few words on the work stream on climate, natural capital, and biodiversity. Very, very briefly, just to say it aims to find operational solutions to investment challenges in this area. And some of them have been referred to by previous distinguished speakers. Then identify investable climate and biodiversity product and assets, so with the idea to replicate that and scale it up. Thirdly, to see how we can deploy capital more effectively into climate positive investments, so green bonds being one of that. And then also fourthly, identify what does this really mean as a change agenda for DFIs, MDBs, national development banks, and other multilateral organizations and donors. In the process, people from across the wide spectrum will be consulted in order to make this as actionable and possible. Just let me conclude, Catherine, I know we are pressured at time, that obviously blended finance can only be effective if we have enabling environments, and previous speakers have been referring to. So basically at the end, it's about sound investments for sustainable development. And that's not the least the reason why also the Development Assistance Committee, so the get-together of this 30 major donors that are providing 160 billion in aid and concessional funding every year, is also looking currently into pulling together a package of decisions that will allow them as development actors to be more effective in supporting countries, emerging countries and developing countries in their transition towards net zero. So I wanted to mention this, and obviously with the energy sector, with capacity building and many, many issues that we have been referred to at the very center of these discussions. And I look forward to reach out to some of you in order to also help the dialogue between the DAC and many of the actors participating today in order to have a really impactful decision package being agreed upon here in Paris. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Haya. And I do encourage you all to reach out to Haya and the OECD. They're doing incredible things at making the right connections and bringing the full system into the room, both public and private capital, donors, development finance institutions, and investors. And with that, it's my pleasure, and with deep apologies for the overrun of the session, to introduce an honor to have you, Larry. Please over to you to question issues that we're running so late.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I will not attempt to summarize this deep dive, which was both thought-provoking and informative, but I'll just touch on a couple of themes that stood out to me. And those two themes were innovation and opportunity. I mean, it's clear from our discussion that there really is a wide range of innovative tools available and under development to catalyze money for climate. One of those innovations is, of course, natural capital markets. Our discussion and the presentation today by our Indonesian colleagues was especially intriguing. This is also an especially promising path and innovation for Indonesia, which has such an abundant reserve of natural capital in its forests and other natural resources. The US Treasury was very pleased to confirm last month that Indonesia is eligible for benefits under the Tropical Forest to free. Also innovative was the notion of national, regional, and indeed global carbon markets. Very intriguing. Let's take our mind back to the years before we had Euro markets and global capital markets, and feel that as future aspiration. I feel like we look forward to the possibilities of developing such national, regional, and global global carbon markets in the years ahead. The World Bank was right to point out that we want to take a phased and careful approach to this, but let's also be ambitious. A final innovation point, I very much appreciated David Elzinger's presentation on the Asian Development Bank's energy transition mechanism, which takes a market-based approach to retiring coal plants early. Terrific. I would urge you, David, and your colleagues at the ADB to structure those transactions so that they accelerate plant decommissioning as much as possible. Regarding opportunity, many speakers talked about the disparity between enormous capital resources those resources to needs. I'll just cite a couple of data points that give me encouragement about the opportunity here. Let me note that ESG fund assets have grown from just 10 billion in 2015 to over 246 billion in 2021. 10 billion to 246 billion. That's an opportunity. Let us work together to build out the connections between that pool of resources and financing needs. And I am very pleased to be working with my colleague and good friend, Luki Alfirman, on that. And we look forward to continuing that work with Indonesia. I'll end it there, Catherine. Thank you so much for the opportunity to touch on a couple of things. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think we're all heading back to the plenary now. As we do that, just acknowledging all our brilliant speakers. Thank you for an incredible session. Please do connect with each other. We didn't have time to discuss much today, but what an incredibly powerful session where we spoke about the energy transition, decarbonisation, innovative finance solutions, and above all, natural capital. And really that is the bedrock of Indonesia's economy as well. I can see that you've got breakout rooms closing in 56 seconds. Let's jump back there now. Thank you again for all of your time and look forward to speaking to you again soon.